Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Seth here. Seth, you're the CEO of Honor, which is a pretty interesting company because there are a lot of different approaches right now in the senior space to make sure that they go into these retirement homes and communities. And you're like, let's go and kind of do the opposite. Let's keep them in their homes. Let's use
Yeah.
AI to optimize that. And you've got a great experience, a lot of experience in the tech world. You helped create the Google sign-in product, which has been a product that I've used. I mean, and so many people use all the time, where you can sign in on all different types of websites that aren't necessarily Google websites with the Google login. And as well, your success with Meebo, you're a serial entrepreneur. It's been very early in a bunch of different areas. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So how did your interest in entrepreneurship, technology, wanting to build businesses is what you do with your life? How did that passion of yours start?
Yeah, I think, everybody gets into entrepreneurship for a different reason. When I was in college and graduating, well, when I was in college, I actually ran a small company. I was in college in New Haven. I was running it in Manhattan, mostly because I was trying to get off campus as much as I possibly could. And then I was pretty scared to go work for other people when I was graduating, but the company I had started wasn't big enough to support me at graduation. And then I went and worked for other people, and I learned a lot, but discovered I, in fact, would prefer to work for myself. So by the time B school rolled around, I saw B school as like, you've got 2 years to do a startup. If you exit B school without having done a startup, you failed. So I had a very clear goal going in, and it had nothing to do with the classes or the grades. It had a lot to do with making sure that I was going to come out the other side having started something, and that turned out to be Meebo.
How did you land on the idea specifically for Meebo, and what did it take to get started?
Yeah, I mean, four other friends and we just like did a ton of brainstorming. It was every Wednesday evening and every Sunday all day. So I just like leave campus, and we just go brainstorm. It was usually in San Jose. And we were just looking for something that we were passionate about, right? Like, what problem could we work on? What could we build? And at the time, we did a lot of instant messaging because, like, that was the thing back then. And instant messaging was still really kludgy. It was in software, and everything else was moving to the web, but instant messaging hadn't. And so that's how we decided to go move instant messaging from software into web browsers.
Hmm, interesting. So, did you have a technical background to build something like that? Like, it doesn't sound to be the simplest thing.
Yeah, no, so it was actually hard technology. At the time, there was this budding concept called Ajax, which we now call JavaScript. And that is how we kind of got dynamic experiences into the web browser. So, for example, Sam Scalability was working on Writely, which became Google Docs. So he sold that to Google. It became Google Docs. Like everybody, not everybody, a few entrepreneurs back then had kind of these ideas around, hey, could you put this dynamic experience into a web browser? So like YouTube was happening right then as well, right? Putting video into the web browser for real. But no, I always tell entrepreneurs, one of the most important things you have to do is find people who are not like you, right? Find people with skills that are not like your own skills. And like way too often you walk into a high school cafeteria and it's like, the jocks are sitting with jocks and science dorks sitting with science dorks. That's kind of where I was. And then you got even like the, tall people hanging out with the tall people and the short people hanging out with the short people. It's like, it's literally what people do. They just hang out with people who are like them. And that's like the anti-pattern for entrepreneurship, right? Like in entrepreneurship, you have to partner with people who are not like you, right? Who have complementary skills as opposed to overlapping skills. And so I was just naturally kind of a kid who did that. Like I had a lot of friends who were really brilliant engineers, right? Or really brilliant graphic designers or whatever. I was neither, but I could talk. So I partnered with people who were a lot smarter than I was, and that's how we made Meebo happen.
What did you think about getting users? Because you guys got, I think, 100 million US uniques monthly is what I saw. I mean, you guys were able to drive a lot of traction. How did you successfully communicate this or get it out there?
Yeah, so when we launched the original Meebo, it was like literally kind of like go to meebo.com and you're launching essentially a web client for instant messaging.
Yeah.
We launched it. This doesn't usually happen. It just took off. Like it just went. And we had built like no viral features in there at all. So it went because people desperately wanted that product. It turned out like a lot of people were at computers. The two biggest cohorts, interestingly, were students at school, right?
Mm.
Like they're at a computer lab. Oh, now I can talk to my friends. And then soldiers in Iraq. That was
Really?
the other really big constituent. And so it just like took off like wildfire. And then as the company grew, we started building social widgets that went on third-party websites. So putting basically like real-time communication and other social features into websites like TMZ was one that deployed it, or TechCrunch deployed it. And that aggregation of all that traffic ended up getting us to literally, it was like half the US internet population monthly across all the sites that we had, content, or not content, like application functionality on, basically.
Mhm. Do you think Seth Google saw that and they thought, like there's this power here in having not owning someone else's site, but being able to integrate in their site, and we should expand to that?
Yeah. So at the time, Google was working on Google Plus, and they had the destination site, and I'm sure they were watching Facebook. And the reality at the time was Facebook was just kicking their butts, right? Especially on kind of web identity. And what I mean by that is, you'd go to a third party website and there can be a sign in with Facebook, and there'd be ways to share and interact with Facebook on
Mm.
TMZ. And we managed to get Meebo on TMZ as well. Google did not understand how to get Google on TMZ, right? And so I think that actually they saw probably two things in Meebo at the time. One was we really have just not been able to crack the code of kind of distributed social, right? Like getting social stuff on the rest of the internet. I think the other one's just a team, right? Like a team of people who actually knew how to do that. And I'll tell you, when I got to Google, I asked them, because we weren't doing sign in at the time, right? We were doing really social real time chat. But we get there, and I was like, the first thing I kind of wanted to fix was, where is like Google sign in, where is Google identity on the rest of the internet? So I asked them, like, why? Like, why is there no Google sign in anywhere else? And the answer is basically, we just can't figure out how to get developers to do it. And that's a really good example of team, right? Because me and our team, we knew exactly what to do, right? It's like, okay, this is what you would build if you were Google, to make developers want to put Google identity onto their sites. So that's what we did.
So they didn't even know what to build, really.
They didn't. It's kind of like they didn't. The thing about building product, people like look at the end stage of a product, and they're like, "Oh, it's so obvious, right? Of course you should have built that." But when you're the one who's actually building the product, and you have to do like each little interaction and each pixel, and what does it mean, and how does it speak to a user without having to read instructions, it's really hard. And so, yeah, they never had been able to figure out how to build a version of kind of social stuff that kind of connected Google to the rest of the internet in a way that was really attractive to both the developers who would have to deploy it and to users. But we knew how to do that, right? That was kind of our expertise. And so we did it for Google.
How did the acquisition by Google happen? I mean, you mentioned the value add that they saw in you. How did that deal even come about?
Yeah. Oh, man. So we're talking, how many years ago is this now? This is 11 years ago, I think, 2014, 2012. Okay, so we're talking 13 years ago. So at the time, we talked to like every company, right? Because our social widgets were embedded across so many companies' websites. And we had a lot of traffic hitting all of our widgets, which meant that we had quite a bit of data. So we just would spend a lot of time with like everyone, right, including Google. And most of the conversations with them were really about how would we partner together, right? Like what were the things that we could do together as two separate companies that would possibly bring our kind of help expand us, but also help expand their reach kind of on social distributed. That ended up becoming a conversation that was more like, actually, like if we're going to do this closely together, you guys should be part of Google.
Yeah, I could see why that made sense for them. How did you handle the acquisition? Because you seem to be a pretty entrepreneurial guy. What was it like trying to be maybe an entrepreneur, inside of Google?
Yeah, so that's a good question. When I got into Google, my basic philosophy was, hey, like I brought, our whole team came in, right?
Yeah.
So I had a team like
Mhm.
right from the start. And that meant that we could move really quickly and we could build really quickly.
Mhm.
So it took us exactly 1 year to launch Google Sign-In.
Huh.
And they were just like, that is so fast. And I kind of felt like that is so slow. But but to me, I was kind of like a kid in a candy store, right? Like I got to go build cool stuff with a distribution and a tool set that I just didn't have before. So it was actually a lot of fun. Not what I wanted to do permanently, because obviously then when I was at Google, came up with the idea for Honor, and I started, thinking about might be time to go and work on this Honor thing instead. But it was really, really fun, and I learned a lot being there.
Mhm. With the Google sign-in feature, like what was Google trying to get out of that? Was it more data, in different sites? Was it just having now them become more prominent as a brand? What was the benefit Google sign-in to them?
Yeah, it was more like what did what did I see as the benefit to Google? Because I was the person building it, and it's kind of Google doesn't at least we're talking about a Google that's of a past era, right? Like this
Yeah.
is 2012 Google,
Mhm.
and so I can't speak at all to
Yeah.
Google today. But back then, it was more like, hey, you just want to be useful and relevant to users, right? It's just
For both
like,
sides.
you've got people, they're all over the internet. Google was more about google.com back then and
Yeah.
helping people find stuff outside of google.com. And the question was, could you create useful, relevant things where Google could give people a better experience when they were not on google.com as well? And that's what, if you think about it, that's what Google sign in really was. Like it very explicitly did not all of a sudden share a ton of your data, right? It wasn't kind of a privacy leak, but rather it was, hey, this is a secure, easy way to sign into a third party site that would make just life easier for users and gave them a lot of control. And that was kind of the thinking at the time.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's just the relevance was so important for them, like you mentioned, and I mean clearly it's really helped them. Google sign is everywhere, every site, pretty much there is at this point.
Yeah,
So
now it is truly, when I left, it wasn't yet ubiquitous. Now I would say it's completely ubiquitous.
and it's faster generally too. So
It's really fast, yeah.
yeah. So you mentioned you had the idea for Honor. What inspired that idea specifically?
Yeah, so this is kind of the interesting thing about entrepreneurship as well. You're like, when you create a company, you have no idea how hard it's going to be, but it's going to be like really, really hard. And there's no company, like YouTube, Facebook included, that doesn't almost die multiple times.
Mhm.
And so if you're going to do a startup, and especially if it's your second one, you're going to hit a ton of brick walls. And you need to work on an idea that you're like deeply, deeply passionate about. Where if you hit like brick wall number 1, 2, 3, and 10 and 20, that you've got the energy to get back up and keep going. And so when we were brainstorming what's the next thing that we would work on, we had like these really hard and fast rules.
Mhm.
And it was basically look a human in the eye and know you're going to make their life better. Millions of humans, not just one. It had to be a really hard problem, like something where we could do it because we were multi-time founders. And so if we worked on it, like we'd have a better chance of fixing something kind of meaningful in society.
Mhm.
And so we spent a long time like on what would that thing be. And then I literally just traveled to my mother's house in Connecticut. She picked me up at the airport and she was just driving slowly when she was driving me home. And I asked her, like, Mom, why are you driving slowly? And she's like, well, driving's harder than it used to be.
Mhm.
And that's when literally it was like, ooh, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what does that mean?
Mhm.
And then I went back to my co-founders like, hey guys, like older adults, tech doesn't work on it at all. We're older entrepreneurs now because we built one, we sold it. Like, we were 10 years kind of older than average, if that made sense. So all of a sudden our parents really weren't anymore our solution, but rather our parents were more like going to be something that we'd have to, work on. It would be our problem. And that would have meaning, right? Like that would be a thing where if you hit that 20th brick wall, it's worth it to get back up and keep going because you know that the world needs the thing you're building. And that was where it came out of.
I mean, it's interesting that you're focused on keeping people in their homes that are seniors. I mean, I guess like most people probably want that rather than going to places, or maybe there's just some audience that there's a large portion of audience that does want that. How do
Like
you?
90% of seniors when polled.
It's
Yes.
really 90% that big.
It's actually 93%. Like, no, if you think about it, right? Like, you're getting older, and now it's like, hey, this home you've lived in for 20, 30, 40, 50 years,
Hmm.
you have to leave. And you have to go back into a high school, like into a facility, into a building, right?
uh
Where you're going to live with a bunch of other people. You're going to eat at a cafeteria, right? I mean, do you want that? And it turns out a whopping 7% of people want it, right? So this is definitely, if you say to people, would you prefer age at home? The answer 93% of the time is yes. The question is, how do you make it possible,
Yeah.
right? It's one of these things where, like, we've got this like deep, deep, deep problem with society. We've got literally millions and millions of people aging into a point where they are going to need help to stay at home. And we actually, the rate at which the older adult population is growing is much, much faster than the rate at which the young person population is growing.
Hmm.
So you've got who is going to take care of the older adults,
Right.
right? How are we going to do that? So it's a massive societal problem that we have to solve. And that is the point of honor. How do we really structurally change how we care for older adults? Staying at home is just like actually one little piece of it. It's like, well, how do you get food? How do you manage drugs? How do you manage healthcare? How do you make sure light bulbs don't burn out so that the home doesn't get dark and then someone slips and falls? And then they've got like a 25% chance of passing away in the next 6 months,
Hmm.
right? These are like huge societal problems that we have to fix. And the question with honor was, what was the base? Like, where do you start? Because the problem's actually too big, right? You can't just go attack the whole thing all at once. You have to find a smart base to start from and then kind of build from there.
So I was going to ask this: how do you actually do this? Like how do you use AI and make this simpler for people? How does the
Yeah.
honor system work? This network?
Yeah. So the base that so if you're starting with, hey, let's change the way society cares for older adults, let's fundamentally reimagine the whole thing. You need to start with a platform. I'm going to go back to consumer internet land, right? Where Meebo was. You want a platform that has either or both engagement and lead gen. So the most value in consumer internet comes from either high engagement, which is kind of like a Facebook or a television. It's like I spend a lot of time, or lead gen. Like, because someone goes and uses the thing, Google, right? They then like find other things that they want to buy.
Mhm.
So if you've got a platform that has the combination of the two, then you can build from there. Home care, you send a personal care aide, which we call a care professional, into the home of an older adult. On average, they spend 6 hours per visit. So that's crazy engagement, right? It's more than television. It's more than Facebook. It's more than anything. You're in their home for 6 hours. And then you're helping them live their lives, like take their medicine, get food, go buy that light bulb and change it for them. So you're doing that stuff for them already. Lead gen. So home care looked like this really good place to start if you wanted to remake how we care for older adults. And the question at the time was, you've got this industry. It's a $30 billion industry in America. So it's huge, but it's massively fragmented, 20,000 plus local agencies. No one has any scale at all. And it's kind of like, why has no one ever been able to scale this industry? And it turned out, we're like, okay, well, let's go figure it out. So we launched an agency in the SF Bay Area, and it was completely unscalable. Like, we got to $10 million in revenue and everything was falling apart. And we said, we're going to have to shut down. We're just like, this is impossible. It's not a technology tractable problem. Humans are crazy. This is hopeless. Like, that was what we thought at like 10 million in revenue. But we had just enough data flowing through the system to start to be able to figure out, like, okay, why are the care pros behaving this way? Like, why would a care pro say, yes, I'll take that job today, and then they're supposed to go 2 days from now, but they just bail and don't show up? Why does Mrs. Smith love Janet the care pro, but Mrs. Jones hates Janet the care pro? Like, is Janet a good care pro or a bad care pro? And these are things that are just like, kind of blow your mind hard in static technology, static algorithms. But if you've got all those things happening again and again throughout the entire system, that's where AI can shine, right? So this is really ML. This is like 2016 AI ML, whatever you want to call it. And it's let's use really big data sets to figure out why humans are behaving the way they are. And then let's predict how we can create better matches between care pros and clients to make both sides happy. And that's important. You need both the care pro to be really happy and you need the client to be really happy if you want a stable relationship between those two people.
Has it been complicated to deploy AI in this area?
Yes. um, you know, AI AI is like, so we're talking again like 2016 AI. Today, when people say AI, they're
Very
thinking Gen
different.
AI, which we now use a lot of too. But here's the thing about technology with older adults. When I launched Honor along with my co-founders, Monica, Cam, and Sandy, I go to VCs and I'm like, hey, we're gonna like build basically an AI platform that's gonna make it so that we can actually scale this industry that's been completely unscalable. And they're like, are you crazy? Older adults and technology don't mix. And I'd always say to them, really? And they'd say, yeah, like you're a moron. And I'd be like, okay, but how many older adults do you know who drive cars? And they'd be like, well, too many. I'd be like, right. And so clearly a car is not technology. You could go out into a parking lot right now and build me a car, right? And they're like, well, no, cars are really hard to build. It's like, exactly. So cars are just technology, right? Like they're really, really advanced, super difficult software plus mechanical engineering plus EE, right? I mean, like they're really hard. Massive numbers of older adults use cars every day. And it's because it's technology that is hidden behind a really great user experience. And that is how actually all technology should be built, right? But that's how we approach AI for this industry. Our older adult clients, our care pros, they don't know that they're using something that's got crazy levels of ML in the background, right? Rather, they're just getting a better care experience, a better human experience. And that, like, that is a thing that we have to remember about AI because there's a lot of like doomsday stuff around AI right now. It's going to take people's jobs, blah, blah, blah. Like, we absolutely use AI to create better jobs for care professionals. For example, our AI works specifically on getting our care pros more stable hours, more stable work, which means more stable take home pay. That's amazing, right? And we could only do that in AI. And AI is getting a client a better care pro for their needs. And guess what? That care pro is happier because they're being put into a home where their skills are relevant, right? We're giving them a job that works for them. So in tech land, we need to be careful that we build technology that actually produces human good, right? And if you start with a human good problem statement, like how do I change the way society cares for older adults, and you recognize that often the solution is human good, like how do I care for care pros, you end up building a bunch of technology that like moves humanity forward.
Do you think that's the reason you're now reaching more than 100,000 homes every single day because you've made this experience that's really powerful, simple for everybody?
Yeah, so it's actually 50,000, a little more than 50,000 homes a day to be super accurate. It's probably more than 100,000 a month. But yeah, like we are now by far the largest in-home senior care network, like in any industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly in the Western Hemisphere, probably the world. I just don't know about China, so like
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself, how do you get there? And really, what we did is we built technology that lets us actually scale home care. And that matters for lots of kind of quality reasons for clients and work, better jobs reasons for care pros. Scale matters. And then that technology creates a better client experience, a better job. And when you create just like a fundamentally better product, right, that tends to grow. And frankly, no one else has created anything like what we have in the world of caring for older adults. And we're the biggest right now, but if we're still just a home care company in 5 years, I'll be pretty disappointed, right? Like we better be well beyond, hey, that home care thing and into that thing that just helps mom and dad. That's kind of the next kind of half decade journey.
Yeah, just the last question I have, Seth. Like, what is your big picture vision here? Like, you just touched on a little bit, but how do you get to that point, and what's kind of like the overall goal of the company?
Yeah, I mean, the overall goal is literally the same from when we started: is change the way society cares for older adults. It's that simple. And we've built this amazing foundation. Now, I think of it as we built the plumbing. Like,
Yeah.
we can reach basically any home of any older adult in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And with that, the question is now, what do we put through that network such that we just completely change the game for either people taking care of their grandparents, or people taking care of their parents, or people taking care of another loved one, or a neighbor? Like, what's that next thing? And we've got some pretty exciting stuff coming, but
Mhm.
we'll talk about that when it's here.
Awesome. Well, Seth, thanks for taking the time and doing this. I think it's really great that you care about this problem. It's a really important problem, and that you're trying to make it as simple as possible to help these elderly people. I mean, they definitely want to stay in their homes based on the numbers you mentioned, and it's keeping them there is crucial. So I'm excited to see what comes next and how you really build out this network even more. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Ben.